The wind howled like a beast in the Canadian wilderness. Snow fell so thick that Jake Miller could barely see 5 feet ahead of him. He pulled his scarf tighter around his face and kept moving. The temperature had dropped to -40 degrees. Most people would be dead in this weather, but Jake was not most people. He had been living alone in these mountains for 3 years now. After leaving the army, he wanted nothing more than peace and quiet. His cabin sat hidden deep in the forest, far from any town or city. He had everything he needed: food, tools, and most importantly, no other people to deal with. Jake moved through the snow on his snowshoes, heading back to his cabin after checking his supply cache. The storm had been going for 2 days now, and it showed no signs of stopping. He knew these mountains better than anyone. Every tree, every rock, every dangerous spot was mapped in his mind. That's why he noticed something was wrong. Through the swirling snow, he saw a strange glow coming from the valley below. It was not natural. The light was too bright, too steady. Jake stopped and pulled out his binoculars. Even through the storm, he could make out twisted metal scattered across the snow. Something had crashed. What the hell? He muttered to himself. Jake made his way down into the valley, moving carefully. On the steep slope, as he got closer, he could see the crash site more clearly. The wreckage was unlike anything he had ever seen. The metal was smooth and silver, almost like liquid. Strange symbols were carved into the surface. This was definitely not from any plane or helicopter, he knew, but that was not the strangest part. 2 figures lay motionless in the snow, near the largest piece of wreckage. At first, Jake thought they were people in some kind of special suits. But as he got closer, he realized they were not human at all. The first figure was tall and thin, maybe 6 feet in height. Her skin was pale blue, almost white with silver, markings that looked like tattoos running down her arms and face. Her hair was long and silver, now covered in snow. She wore a form-fitting suit that seemed to be made of the same strange material as the crashed ship. The second figure was smaller, maybe 5.5 feet tall. She had the same blue skin and silver markings, but her face was rounder, more delicate. Her hair was shorter, and she looked younger. Both of them had eyes that were closed, but Jake could see they were larger than human eyes. With no visible pupils, they were clearly not from Earth. Jake's first instinct was to run. He had no idea what these things were or where they came from. They could be dangerous, they could be diseased. They could be anything, but then he saw something that made him stop. The smaller one was shivering, even unconscious. Her body was trying to fight the cold. Her lips had turned a darker shade of blue, and her breathing was shallow and weak. The larger one was in even worse shape. She was barely breathing at all. They were dying. Jake stood there for a long moment, snow falling around him. Every logical part of his brain told him to walk away. These were aliens, creatures from another world. He had no idea what they were capable of. Getting involved would only bring trouble, but Jake had spent 6 years in the army. He had been trained to help people in danger, no matter who they were. And right now, these 2 beings were in serious trouble. "Damn it," he said, under his breath. Jake dropped his pack and pulled out his emergency medical kit. He had treated hypothermia before, but never on aliens. He hoped their bodies worked enough like human bodies that his training would help. He knelt beside the smaller one first. Her pulse was weak but steady. Her skin was ice-cold to the touch. Jake quickly pulled out his emergency blanket and wrapped it around her. Then he did the same for the larger one. The thermal blankets would help, but they needed to get warm fast. Jake looked around the crash site. There were pieces of wreckage everywhere, but nothing that looked like it could provide shelter. He was going to have to get them back to his cabin. Jake pulled out his emergency sled from his pack. It was small, meant for carrying supplies, but it would have to do. He carefully lifted the smaller alien onto the sled. She was lighter than he expected, but still heavy enough to make the journey difficult. The larger one was too big to fit on the sled with her sister. Jake would have to carry her. He bent down and lifted her over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. She was heavier than the smaller one, but Jake was strong. He had carried wounded soldiers before, and he could do this. The journey back to his cabin was the longest 2 miles of Jake's life. The storm made it hard to see, and the extra weight made every step difficult. Several times he had to stop and rest, making sure both aliens were still breathing. The smaller one on the sled kept shivering, which Jake took as a good sign. The larger one over his shoulder had stopped shivering completely, which was not good at all. By the time Jake reached his cabin, he was exhausted. His legs shook with fatigue and his lungs burned from the cold air, but he had made it. More importantly, both aliens were still alive. Jake kicked open his cabin door and pulled the sled inside. The warmth hit him like a wall. He had left his wood stove burning, and the cabin was nice and warm. He quickly carried the larger alien inside and laid her on his couch. Then he brought the smaller one in and put her on his bed. Both aliens were still unconscious, but their breathing seemed a little stronger in the warm air. Jake pulled off their wet outer garments and covered them with his warmest blankets. Then he sat down in his chair and looked at what he had done. He had just brought 2 alien beings into his home. He had no idea who they were, where they came from, or what they wanted. For all he knew, they could be dangerous killers who would attack him as soon as they woke up, but they had looked so helpless lying in the snow, and Jake could not just let them die. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Inside his cabin, Jake Miller sat watching over 2 beings from another world, wondering what he had gotten himself into. The adventure was just beginning. Jake did not sleep that night. He sat in his chair, watching the 2 aliens breathe under his blankets. Every few minutes he would check their pulse and temperature. The smaller one seemed to be getting better. Her shivering had stopped and her breathing was deeper. But the larger one was still in bad shape. Around 3 in the morning, the smaller alien's eyes opened. Jake froze. Her eyes were completely silver, with no pupils that he could see. They seemed to glow softly in the dim light of the cabin. She looked around the room with confusion. Then her eyes found Jake. For a moment, neither of them moved. Jake's hand slowly moved toward the rifle he kept beside his chair. The alien noticed the movement and raised her hands, palms out, in what looked like a peaceful gesture. "Please," she said in a voice that was musical but strained. "No harm, no harm." Jake was shocked. She could speak English, though with a strange accent. "You can understand me?" The alien nodded weakly. She reached into her suit and pulled out a small device. It looked like a crystal wrapped in metal wires. "Translation device. It learns your language quickly. What are you?" Jake asked, still ready to grab his rifle. "My name is Naya," she said, sitting up slowly. "That is my sister, Kira." She pointed to the larger alien on the couch. "We are from the Veltar system. Our world is was dying." Jake could hear the sadness in her voice. "You're refugees?" "Yes, our ship broke down in your atmosphere. We crashed." Naya looked at her sister with worry. "Is she going to be okay?" Jake stood up and walked over to check on Kira. Her temperature was still too low, but it was getting better. She lived, but it was close. Another hour in that cold. "And you both would have died." Naya's silver eyes widened. "You saved us. Why?" The question caught Jake off guard. "Because you needed help." We are strangers. We are not even your species." "Most beings would have left us to die," Jake shrugged. "I'm not most beings, I guess." Naya stared at him with something that looked like amazement. "In our world, such kindness is rare, especially to strangers." Over the next few hours, Naya told Jake about their world. The Veltar system had been at war for decades. Their planet was dying from the fighting, and most of the population had fled to other worlds. Naya and Kira had been trying to reach a safe colony when their ship failed. "We are the last of our family line," Naya explained. "Our parents, our brothers, all killed in the war. Only Kira and I escaped." "I'm sorry," Jake said, and he meant it. He had lost friends in the army, but he could not imagine losing his entire family. "You are kind," Naya said. "Kira will like you when she wakes up." Around noon, Kira finally opened her eyes. Unlike her sister, she was immediately alert and defensive. She sat up quickly, looked around the room, and focused on Jake with suspicious eyes. "Where are we?" she demanded. Her voice was deeper than Naya's more commanding. Safe, Naya said quickly. This human saved us. His name is Jake. Kira studied Jake carefully. He could see she was evaluating him, looking for threats. Human, she said slowly. I have heard of your species. You are? Supposed to be violent and unpredictable. Some of us are, Jake admitted, but not all of us. He pulled us from the snow, Naya said. He carried us here and warmed us. He could have left us to die. Kira's expression softened slightly. You saved us both? Yes, Jake said simply. Kira was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised Jake. She stood up, walked over to him, and placed her hand on his chest. It was some kind of gesture, formal and respectful. I am Kira, warrior of the Veltar. I owe you a life debt. You don't owe me anything, Jake said. Anyone would have done the same. Those sisters looked at each other and laughed. It was a beautiful sound like music. No, Kira said, they would not. You are different. Over the next few days, Jake learned more about the sisters. Naya was a technology specialist. She could fix almost anything and understood computers better than anyone Jake had ever met. Kira was a soldier, trained in tactics and combat. She had been protecting her sister during their escape. The sisters were fascinated by Jake's survival skills. They had never seen someone live so simply but so effectively. When Jake showed them how he preserved food, how he generated power, and how he stayed warm in the harsh climate, they were amazed. Your technology is primitive, Naya said one evening as she watched Jake cook dinner over his wood stove. But your methods are so clever. You use everything, waste nothing. You have to when you live alone, Jake said. You choose to live alone? Kira asked. That is unusual for humans, is it not? Jake shrugged. I like the quiet. People are complicated. We are people, Naya pointed out with a smile. You're different, Jake said, then realized how that sounded. I mean, you're not complicated, you're honest. The sisters exchanged another look. Jake was starting to notice they did that a lot, like they could communicate without words. In our culture, Kira said carefully, honesty is very important, especially between potential mates. Jake almost choked on his coffee. Mates? Do humans not seek mates? Naya asked innocently. Well, yes, but... Jake struggled for words. You are a good male, Kira said matter-of-factly. Strong, protective, resourceful. You would make excellent mate material. I what? Jake felt his face getting red. The sisters giggled at his reaction. We are not saying anything definite. Naya said, we are just observing. Observing what exactly? That you have all the qualities our species values in a mate, Kira said. Courage, kindness, the ability to provide and protect. Jake stood up quickly. I think I need some air. He stepped outside into the cold night. The storm had finally stopped, and the stars were visible through the clear sky. Jake took deep breaths of the freezing air, trying to clear his head. The sisters were talking about him like he was husband material. The idea was crazy. They were aliens from another world. He was just a guy who lived alone in the mountains, but as he stood there in the snow, Jake realized something. For the first time in years, his cabin did not feel empty. The sisters' laughter, their conversation, their presence. It made the place feel alive. Maybe being alone was not as great as he thought when Jake came back inside. The sisters were looking at a small device that glowed with soft light. What's that? He asked. Emergency beacon, Naya said. It activated when we crashed. Help should come eventually. But so might enemies, Kira added darkly. Those who hunt us will also detect the signal. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold outside. What kind of enemies? The kind that would rather capture us than let us go free, Kira said. Jake looked at both sisters, then at his rifle hanging on the wall. Then I guess we better be ready for them. The sisters stared at him in surprise. You would fight for U.S.? Naya asked. You're under my protection now, Jake said. That means something. Kira smiled for the first time since waking up. I told you he was different, sister. Outside, the wind began to pick up again. But inside the cabin, 3 beings from 2 different worlds began to plan for whatever was coming. The real adventure was about to begin. The next morning brought another snowstorm. Jake woke up to find both sisters sitting by the window watching the white wall of snow outside. They looked worried. "Bad weather?" Jake asked, walking over with 3 cups of hot coffee. "Very bad," Kira said, accepting the cup gratefully. "This will delay any rescue ships, but it will also delay our enemies." "Good and bad then," Jake said, sitting down beside them. Naya nodded. "The storm gives us time to prepare, and time to—" She looked at her sister, then back at Jake. "Time to get to know each other better." Jake noticed the way she said it, like it meant something more. The sisters had been making comments like that for days now. Comments about him being a good provider, a strong protector, someone who would make a good mate. Jake was starting to realize they were not just being friendly. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said, "In your culture, when you talk about mates, what exactly does that mean?" The sisters exchanged one of their silent looks. Then Kira spoke. "In our world, finding a mate is about more than just attraction. It is about partnership, about building a life together, about survival. Our species forms very strong bonds." Naya added, "When we choose a mate, it is for life. We share everything, responsibilities, decisions, even our thoughts sometimes." "That sounds intense," Jake said. "It is," Kira agreed. "That is why choosing the right mate is so important. They must be someone who can protect the family, provide for them, and be trusted completely." Jake felt like they were trying to tell him something. "And you think I have these qualities?" "We know you do," Naya said simply. "You have already proven it by saving us," Kira added. "By taking us into your home, by offering to protect us from our enemies. These are not small things." Jake was quiet for a moment. He had to admit he had grown fond of the sisters. They were smart, brave, and surprisingly easy to talk to. They did not judge him for living alone or for his simple lifestyle. In fact, they seemed to admire it. "There's something else," Naya said carefully. "In our culture, sisters often share a mate." Jake nearly choked on his coffee. "Share? It strengthens family bonds," Kira explained. "And it ensures that both sisters have protection and support. It is not uncommon among our people." "But you're talking about marriage," Jake said. "I mean, that's what this is about, right? If you want to call it that," Naya said. "We call it bonding. It is a commitment between 3 people to care for each other, protect each other, and build a life together." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the snow continued to fall. His mind was racing. A week ago, he had been living alone, happy with his solitude. Now he was talking about marriage with 2 alien women who had crash-landed in his backyard. "You do not have to decide anything now," Kira said gently. "We are just telling you how we feel." "How you feel?" Jake asked. Turning back to them, "That we care about you," Naya said. "That we want to stay with you, even after rescue comes. That we think you are the kind of male we want to spend our lives with," Kira added. Jake felt something warm spread through his chest. These 2 beautiful, intelligent women, aliens but still women, were telling him they wanted to be with him. It was crazy, but it also felt right somehow. "I care about you both too," he admitted. "I didn't expect to, but I do." The sisters smiled at each other, then at him. "We know," Naya said. "We can see it in the way you look at us, the way you take care of us. The way you are willing to fight for us," Kira added. Over the next few days, the 3 of them settled into a routine. Jake continued to teach them about survival on Earth. He showed them how to preserve food, how to track animals, how to read weather patterns. The sisters were quick learners, and they brought their own knowledge to share. Naya fixed Jake's old radio, making it work better than it ever had. She also improved his heating system, making the cabin warmer while using less wood. Kira taught Jake fighting techniques that were far more advanced than anything he had learned in the army. "Your military training is good," Kira said one afternoon, as they practiced hand-to-hand combat outside. "But it is designed for fighting other humans. Our enemies are different." "Different how?" Jake asked, breathing hard from the workout. "Faster, stronger, more advanced weapons," Kira explained. But they are also overconfident. They expect easy victories. They do not expect humans to fight back effectively. That could be an advantage, Jake said. Exactly, Kira smiled. You think like a warrior. Meanwhile, Naya was working on understanding the wreckage from their ship. She had salvaged several pieces of technology that might be useful for defense. I can modify your weapons, she told Jake. Make them more effective against our enemies. What kind of enemies are we talking about exactly? Jake asked. Bounty hunters mostly, Naya said. The Dominion puts high prices on refugees like us. We have knowledge they want, and our genetic line is valuable for breeding programs. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. They want to use you as breeding stock? Yes, Kira said simply. That is why we can never go back. That is why we must fight. Then we fight, Jake said firmly. The sisters looked at him with something like, you would risk your life for us? Naya asked. You're not just refugees anymore, Jake said. You're my ... He paused, not sure what to call them. Family? Kira said softly. Yes, Jake agreed. You're my family now. That night, as the storm continued outside, the three of them sat around the fire. Jake was working on his weapons, cleaning and preparing them for whatever was coming. Naya was modifying some of the alien technology to work with Earth materials. Kira was studying maps of the area, planning defensive positions. Jake, Naya said suddenly, can I ask you something personal? Sure, why did you leave the army? Why did you choose to live alone? Jake was quiet for a moment. I got tired of people dying, he said finally. I got tired of making decisions. That got good people killed. I thought if I lived alone, I could not hurt anyone anymore. But you were helping people, Kira said. You were protecting them. Sometimes, Jake said. But sometimes I made mistakes. Sometimes people died because of my choices. That is the burden of leadership, Kira said. Every warrior carries it. But you still chose to protect us, Naya pointed out, even though it meant taking on that burden again. Jake looked at both sisters. Some things are worth the risk. We feel the same way about you, Naya said quietly. About us? Kira added. About this family we are building. Jake nodded. I'm starting to understand that. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. But inside the cabin, three beings from two different worlds were becoming something more than just allies. They were becoming a family, and families protected each other. No matter what the cost, the storm would end soon. And when it did, their real test would begin. The storm finally ended on the 5th day. Jake woke up to bright sunlight streaming through the cabin windows and complete silence outside. The kind of silence that came after heavy snow when the whole world seemed wrapped in white cotton, but the silence would not last long. Jake, Naya called from her position at the modified radio. I'm picking up signals. Multiple ships entering Earth's atmosphere. Jake hurried over to look at the display. Naya had connected her alien technology to his radio equipment, creating a detection system that could track spacecraft. The screen showed several blips moving toward their location. How many? Jake asked. At least 6, Naya said, her voice tight with worry. Some are friendly rescue ships from our people, but others ... She pointed to 3 blips that were moving faster than the rest. Those are Dominion hunters. How long do we have? Jake asked. Kira looked up from the weapons she was preparing. The hunters will arrive first. Maybe 2 hours. Jake felt his stomach drop. And the rescue ships? 4 hours, maybe 5, Naya said. So we need to survive for at least 3 hours on our own, Jake said. Against professional bounty hunters with advanced weapons, Kira added grimly. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. He could try to hide the sisters, maybe move them deeper into the forest, but the hunters would have tracking equipment. They would find them eventually. And running would mean giving up all the defensive advantages of the cabin. We stay and fight, Jake said finally. Both sisters stared at him. Jake, Naya said carefully, these are not ordinary soldiers. They are killers who hunt people for money. They have weapons and armor far beyond anything on Earth. Maybe, Jake said, but they don't know these mountains. They don't know winter warfare. And they definitely don't know humans. Kira smiled slowly. You have a plan. I have the beginning of one, Jake said. But we need to move fast. The next 2 hours were a blur of activity. Jake and Kira worked together to set up defensive positions around the cabin. They used the thick snow to build barriers and create hidden firing positions. Naya modified Jake's hunting rifles with alien technology, making them more powerful and accurate. Your weapons are primitive, Naya explained as she worked, but they are also unpredictable. The hunter's armor is designed to stop energy weapons, not solid projectiles. Good, Jake said, checking his rifle. Simple and effective. Very human. Kira said with approval. As they worked, Jake found himself thinking about the choice he was making. A week ago, his biggest worry was whether he had enough firewood for the winter. Now he was preparing to fight alien bounty hunters to protect 2 women he had fallen in love with. Because that's what this was, he realized. Love, somehow, impossible as it seemed, he had fallen in love with both sisters. Not just attraction, but real love. The kind that made you willing to die for someone. Jake, Naya said quietly as she handed him his modified rifle, you don't have to do this. You could still leave, hide in the forest until it's over. Is that what you want? Jake asked. No, Naya said immediately. But we don't want you to die for us either. I'm not planning to die, Jake said. I'm planning to win. The odds are not good, Kira said. 3 hunters, probably with advanced armor and weapons. I've faced worse odds, Jake said. And I've never had partners as skilled as you two. The sisters exchanged one of their looks. Then Kira spoke. In our culture, when 3 people face death together, they often make a formal bond. A commitment to each other that lasts beyond life. Like marriage? Jake asked. Deeper than marriage, Naya said. It is a joining of souls, of destinies. It means we are one family, one unit, forever. Jake looked at both sisters. They were asking him to make the ultimate commitment right before what might be their last battle. Part of him thought it was crazy, but another part of him, the part that had been empty for so long, knew it was right. Yes, he said simply. The bonding ceremony was brief but meaningful. There were no rings or formal words, just the 3 of them standing together in the snow, holding hands and making promises. Promises to protect each other, to love each other, to never abandon each other. We are one now, Kira said. One family, Naya agreed. One unit, Jake finished. That's when the first hunter ship appeared. It came in fast and low. A sleek black craft that looked like a knife cutting through the sky. Jake and the sisters took their positions as the ship landed in the clearing near the cabin. Remember, Jake said through the radio headset Naya had given him, they expect easy targets. Let's give them a surprise. 3 figures emerged from the ship. They were tall and thin, wearing dark armor that covered them completely. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but Jake could see glowing red eyes through the visors. They moved. With the confidence of predators who had never met real resistance, the lead hunter spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. Veltar refugees, you are surrounded. Surrender now, and you will not be harmed. Liars, Kira whispered over the radio. They never leave witnesses. The hunters began moving toward the cabin, their weapons ready. But they were not prepared for what Jake had planned. The first trap was simple, a tripwire connected to a pile of logs. When the lead hunter stepped on it, half a ton of snow and wood came crashing down. The hunter's armor saved him from serious injury, but it knocked him down and separated him from his partners. Now, Jake shouted, the battle began in earnest. Jake's modified rifle punched through the hunter's armor like it was paper. The alien technology Naya had added made the simple earth weapon devastating. The hunter went down with a scream of surprise and pain, but the other 2 hunters were already moving, their own weapons firing beams of energy that melted through snow and wood. Jake had to dive behind his snow barrier as superheated air passed. Over his head, left side, Kira called out. She was moving through the trees like a ghost, using the forest to her advantage. Her own weapon, a modified shotgun, caught the second hunter by surprise. The blast sent him flying into a tree, but the third hunter was smarter. He stayed back, using his long-range weapon to keep Jake and Kira pinned down. His energy beams were melting their cover, and soon they would have nowhere to hide. That's when Naya showed why she was more than just a technician. She had circled around behind the hunters. While they were focused on Jake and Kira, now she appeared. Behind the third hunter with a device Jake had never seen before. It looked like a metal rod with glowing crystals at one end. "Hey!" she called out. The hunter turned, and Naya triggered her device. Lightning shot out, wrapping around the hunter's armor. The alien screamed as electricity coursed through his body, then collapsed. Silence fell over the clearing. "Is that all of them?" Jake asked, breathing hard. "For now," Kira said, "but more will come." "How long until the rescue ships arrive?" Jake asked. Naya checked her equipment. 1 hour, maybe less. "Then we hold for 1 hour," Jake said. But as he spoke, more ships appeared on the horizon. 3. More hunter vessels, larger than the first one. "Jake," Naya said quietly, "I don't think we can fight that many." Jake looked at his wives, because that's what they were now, his wives and his family. He saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. They would fight until the end, all of them together. "Then we better get creative," Jake said. "Because I'm not losing my family today." The real battle was about to begin. The 3 new hunter ships circled overhead like vultures. Jake watched them through his binoculars, counting weapons and looking for weaknesses. These ships were bigger than the first one, with more firepower and probably more hunters. 9 more enemies at least, Kira said, checking her own equipment. "Maybe 12, Naya added, monitoring their communications. "And they're angry about losing the first team," Jake smiled grimly. "Good. Angry enemies make mistakes." But even as he said it, Jake knew they were in serious trouble. 3 against 12 was not good odds, even with their advantages. They needed help, and they needed it soon. "How long until rescue?" Jake asked. 30 minutes, Naya said. "But Jake, even our rescue ships might not be able to fight this many." "Hunters. Then we need to even the odds," Jake said. He looked around the clearing, thinking fast. The destroyed cabin, the forest, the steep mountain slopes, everything could be a weapon if used right. "I have an idea," Jake said, "but it's crazy." "Crazy how?" Kira asked. Jake pointed to the slope above them. "See that ridge? There's about 10 tons of snow up there just waiting to come down. If we could trigger an avalanche, it would bury the landing zone," Naya said, understanding immediately. "The hunters would be trapped." "But so would we," Kira pointed out. "Not if we're already moving," Jake said. "We lead them up the mountain, trigger the avalanche, then escape through the forest." The sisters looked at each other, then at Jake. "It could work," Kira said slowly. "It's our best chance," Naya agreed. The plan was simple but dangerous. Jake would make himself visible, drawing the hunters into chasing him up the mountain. Kira and Naya would circle around, setting charges from their salvaged ship technology at key points on the ridge. When Jake gave the signal, they would trigger the avalanche. As the hunter ships landed, Jake stepped out into the open. "Hey!" he shouted, firing his rifle at the nearest ship. "Looking for us?" The response was immediate. Hunters poured out of the ships, at least a dozen of them. They were bigger than the first group, wearing heavier armor and carrying more powerful weapons. Their leader pointed at Jake and barked orders in their alien language. Jake ran. He sprinted up the mountain slope, staying just ahead of the energy beams that melted the snow around him. The hunters followed, their heavy armor making them slow in the deep snow. Jake used every trick he knew, changing direction, using trees for cover, making himself a hard target. Behind him, he could hear the hunters struggling with the terrain. They were designed for urban warfare, not mountain survival. The snow was slowing them down, and the thin air at altitude was making them tired. "In position," Kira's voice came through his radio. "Ready here too," Naya added. Jake looked back. The hunters were spread out across the slope, directly under the ridge where Kira and Naya had placed their charges. It was perfect. "Do it." Jake shouted. The explosions were small, but they were in exactly the right places. The snow on the ridge cracked, shifted, and then began to move. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. The hunters looked up just in time to see thousands of tons of snow rushing down at them. Some tried to run, but it was too late. The avalanche swept them away like toys, burying them under a white wall of destruction. But Jake wasn't safe yet. The avalanche was coming for him. Too, he ran sideways across the slope, trying to get out of its path. He could feel the ground shaking under his feet as the snow thundered past. Strong hands grabbed him and pulled him behind a large boulder. Kira and Naya had reached him just in time. The three of them huddled together as the avalanche roared past, filling the air with snow and ice. When it was over, the clearing was gone. Where the hunter ships had been, there was now just a smooth field of white snow. The hunters were buried somewhere underneath. "Is that all of them?" Jake asked. Breathing hard. "I think so," Naya said, checking her scanner. "I'm not detecting any life signs." But their celebration was cut short by new sounds from the sky. More ships were coming, but these were different. Sleeker, more elegant, with silver hulls that gleamed in the sunlight. "Rescue ships," Naya said excitedly. "Our people found us." 3. Veltar ships landed in a clearing further down the mountain. Jake watched as figures emerged, tall, graceful beings with the same blue skin as Kira and Naya, but these wore flowing robes instead of armor, and they moved with peaceful purpose. The reunion was emotional. Kira and Naya ran to meet their people, speaking rapidly in their own language. Jake hung back, suddenly feeling out of place. These were Naya and Kira's real people. They had lives and responsibilities beyond this mountain dot, but Naya turned and called to him, "Jake, come meet Captain Velrun." The captain was an older Veltar with silver hair and kind eyes. He spoke English with the help of a translation device. "So you are the human who saved our daughters," he said. "We owe you a great debt." "They saved themselves," Jake said. "I just helped." "Do not be modest," the captain said. "We monitored the battle. Your tactics were impressive, primitive, but effective." "Thank you, I think," Jake said. The captain smiled. It was meant as a compliment. "We have much to learn from human ingenuity." Over the next hour, Jake learned about the rescue mission. The Veltar had been searching for Kira and Naya for weeks. They had tracked the emergency beacon, but the Dominion hunters had been tracking it too. The rescue had turned into a race, and Jake's actions had tipped the balance. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we take our daughters to safety," the captain sighed. "There is a Veltar colony world, far from the war zones. They will be safe there." Jake felt his heart sink. Of course the sisters would leave. They had their own people, their own world to go to. What did they need with a simple human who lived alone on a mountain? But Kira and Naya had other ideas. "We are not going alone," Kira announced. "Jake is our bonded mate," Naya added. "Where we go, he goes." The captain raised his eyebrows. "A human mate? This is unusual." But not forbidden," Kira said firmly. "And Jake has proven himself worthy." "Indeed he has," the captain agreed. "But are you certain, Jake Miller?" "Leaving Earth means leaving everything you know." "You would be?" "One human among thousands of Veltar." Jake looked at Kira and Naya. They were watching him with hope and love in their silver eyes. A week ago, he had been alone, hiding from the world. Now he had a family who wanted him, who needed him. "I've never been more certain of anything," Jake said. The journey to the Veltar colony took 3 days. Jake spent the time learning about his new home and his new life. The colony world was beautiful, mountains and forests like Earth, but with 2 suns and 3 moons. The Veltar people welcomed him warmly. Fascinated by the human who had bonded with 2 of their daughters, Jake found work as a survival instructor, teaching Veltar colonists how to live off the land. His Earth skills translated well to the new world, and his human adaptability made him valuable to the growing colony. Kira became head of planetary defense. Using the tactical knowledge she had learned from fighting alongside Jake, Naya established a technology center finding ways to blend Veltar science with human ingenuity, but the best part was their life together. The three of them built a home in the mountains, not unlike Jake's old cabin, but bigger and more comfortable. They worked together, fought together, and loved together. 6 months after arriving on the colony world, Naya made an announcement that changed everything. "I'm pregnant," she said one evening as they sat watching the sunset. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. "Pregnant? With twins," Naya said, smiling. "The medical scanner shows human Veltar hybrids. They will be the first of their kind." Kira placed her hand on her own stomach. "As am I also twins." Jake sat down heavily. "4 babies? 4 children who will carry the best of both our species," Kira said. "Strong like humans, intelligent like Veltar. They will be the future." Naya added, "The bridge between our peoples." Jake looked out at the alien landscape that was now his home. A year ago, he had been hiding from life, afraid to care about anyone. Now he was surrounded by love, with 4 children on the way, and a purpose that went beyond just survival. "I never thought I'd say this," Jake said, "but I'm glad those hunters found you." "Why?" Naya asked. "Because if they hadn't, you never would have crashed in my backyard. And I never would have found my real family." Kira and Naya moved closer. To him, one on each side. "We would have found each other somehow," Kira said. "Some things are meant to be like family," Naya agreed. As the twin suns set over their new world. Jake Miller, former soldier, former hermit, now husband and father-to-be, realized that sometimes the best adventures began with a simple choice to help someone in need, and sometimes helping others led to finding yourself.